It is the FTN Fast Break Podcast, Monday, December 16th, 2024, episode 30. What is going on, everybody? Zach Graham, aka Kawaisenberg DFS, joined once again by my good buddy Adam Pfeiffer, decked out in the Bills regalia. You got that one game lead over my Steelers now, Adam. How was your weekend?
Yeah, it was good. I was watching the Bills Lions game with one of my really good friends who's a Lions fan. My mom happens to be a Lions fan, so
Oh, boy.
yeah, it was per usual. Didn't make it easy, but when you have the best player in football, you'll win a lot of games.
You gonna say Josh Allen. It's pretty good.
He's quite good.
Yeah, pretty
It's
good.
almost like he's not overrated.
Yeah. Well, you know who else isn't overrated? Your Cleveland Cavaliers. Evan Mobley misses on Friday. They take care of business 22-4 still
Doesn't
at the
count.
top of the league.
Doesn't
Doesn't
count.
count because Evan Mobley wasn't in?
No, I mean it doesn't count because they played the Wizards.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll talk about the Wizards a little bit later. Or at least touch on the Wizards. Evan Mobley supposed to be back in tonight. Still no Max Strus though. So
Which
that
was
was a
really
little
weird because he was supposed to be back like last week, and he's
yeah.
now missed the last. He's going to miss the next two.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
hopefully, just being cautious with him.
Yeah, we'll keep our eye on that. We talked about the Jimmy Butler trade rumors last week, but we did have a trade. No Jimmy Butler on the move, at least yet. But Dennis Schroder going from east to west. Schroder traded from Brooklyn to the Golden State Warriors. Warriors also picked up a 2025 second round pick by way of Miami, and they send back to Brooklyn DeAnthony Melton, who of course is out for the year. Reese Beekman, and three second round picks. Those would be 2026 and 2028 from the Hawks, and a 2029 pick from the Warriors. All three of those second round picks. So I guess let's talk about the player in this trade that grabbed all the headlines, Dennis Schroder to the Warriors. How do you think he fits here in the Dubs backcourt?
Yeah, I like this move, and I think Steph and Draymond were really happy about it, which is obviously what you want to see. Um, he right now is averaging just over 18 points per game. It's the most since I think it was like 2019,
Correct.
his final season with OKC. Obviously, he's taking more shots, but it's not this insane jump. It's like 14 per game. His efficiency's been good. He's shooting career high like 39% from three. Um, and like what they hoped to get from D'Anthony Melton, obviously he had the back issue with Philadelphia. Then he tore his ACL, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was like partially torn, but still took him out for the year,
Yeah, and
obviously.
it's just like when he first signed with the Sixers, I think I remember talking to you as well. We were both really high on D'Anthony Melton as a player,
Yeah.
and defensively, I don't know if like peak D'Anthony Melton is what we're gonna get from Schroeder defensively, but we remember back when he was with the Lakers, he was a really good, probably their best like point of attack defensive player outside of Anthony Davis, obviously, but just on ball. So if they can get any of that, being able to pair him with Steph and still have somebody that can create, I think it's a win for them. Plus, you have the fact that it gives them still the ability to play different lineups. Now, I think the move was needed because as you have in the notes, like they are after that hot start, they're struggling. They're like, I think I was looking at the standings. They're like 2-8 in their last 10 or something. They are
Yep.
probably the team in terms of record wise. We probably expect them to be this season, just not the team that started, as hot as they did. But
Yep.
overall, I like the move quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think it's certainly a plus, right? I mean, for a team like the Warriors, when you can move somebody who's out for the year and
Right.
not a huge piece, of the future plans, right? That doesn't change their, the immediate future of the Warriors to have D'Anthony Melton out for the season and now off the team. But you mentioned how Schroeder has had a great year so far with Brooklyn. He has been the main reason from the few. Admittedly, I haven't watched a ton of Brooklyn games this year, probably like one and a half total, but like 18 and a half points per game, six and a half assists, three rebounds, shooting 45, 39, 89, which this is a 44, 34, 84 player on his career, right? A 12-year career so far. And even with the 12 years, like he's still 31 years old. He'll be 32 later this season, I believe. But it's not like he is outrageously past it here. And I think you could see some of that in the international play. Like international Schroeder is like like maybe getting to like Patty Mills levels, right? Where he's just
Definitely
like
thought that's where I
incredible.
thought you were going with that
Yeah, I
too.
mean, it's incredible in the FIBA game
Well,
over
they
the last
played.
couple
I was gonna
years.
say because like who was the coach of the U.S. team
Yep.
when they played him, and
Well, and Steve Kerr said he said Schroeder's kicked his ass on 3 continents now. So
he had like 13 and 10 that game too.
yeah, yeah,
So it reminds me
yeah,
of like when teams trade for players in the NFL that have like a receiver that goes for like 12 for 150 and two against them, and
yeah.
then the next season or later in the season, it's like, yeah, I'm like sure that had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the thing too that I find interesting, like according to the rule book, because this trade officially happened on the 15th, Schroeder was traded before December 16th today when the deadline is where like anybody traded after this, I don't believe can be traded again if they appear for the team, right? Like you could have a Luke Ridnour situation where you get traded in the middle of the season and you get traded 4 more times in a week, because you actually haven't landed with the team yet. But the fact that you can now package Schroeder, I think it's on like a $13 million deal, if I recall correctly, like you can add Schroeder into a Wiggins or a Kuminga or whatever, a package to maybe go try to get a higher caliber player. So like I'm not 100% convinced that Schroeder actually ends the season as or like past the trade deadline is still a Warrior, but we'll get an extended look here, you would think, with him probably slotting. I believe Coach Kerr said that he's going to slot right into the starting lineup next to Steph, and that makes a lot of sense. Not just because of how well Schroeder's played this season, but Kerr has kind of struggled to find that consistent fifth starter there in the backcourt. But like we thought, he said it was going to be Melton after he finally got healthy, and then of course the knee injury. And Brandon Pajemski has played so poorly this season. I think we talked about that on the last episode. Like to get less Pajemski minutes and try to let him figure it out while he's not impact, like you're not having to count on him as much. Like that seems like a win, at least in the short term. But again, I do think the Warriors are primed for another move, whether Schroeder gets included and sent back out or not. They are still, by all accounts, still going to be very active in trying
Could
to find
easily
another
be
trade
with the
partner.
same team if it's Cam Johnson because like
Yeah, sure, right?
it
Yeah,
feels like the players that might have a chance of being moved are like the Jimmy Butlers, the Vucevic type
right.
players, but I don't think like the Bulls apparently still want a first for Vooch and nobody's giving them that obviously. And
Yeah.
then Jimmy, we'll see. So like the best player that could be moved at the deadline could be Cam Johnson.
Yep. Well, and it could be Jimmy Butler, and we have per the Hoop Collective podcast here on Monday morning. According to them, Jimmy Butler has quote made it known that he will test free agency no matter what. Now, trade value in the garbage can now
I was
because
gonna say that's really enticing for teams.
yeah, but I also think that that's just it's straight up BS. Because like you can say you're gonna test the free agent market, but there ain't nobody giving him 50 million a year, so he's gonna pick up that player option
Right.
wherever he goes. So I just don't like. I'm kind of chalking that up to just more like antics from Jimmy Butler. Actually, I heard Dave Jacoby on one of the Ringers podcasts bring up that I don't know if it was Jacoby or not, but somebody had tracked the last 4 colors of braids that Jimmy Butler had in his hair, and they corresponded to the 4 teams that came out that he was supposed to, be okay with being traded to. So
It's the
again, I
analysis we
don't
need.
know the veracity of that statement or that research, but that is what David Jacoby brought up on. I believe it was the mismatch there at the Ringer. But again, this feels like more antics to me from Jimmy Butler because if you want out, why would you tank your trade value like that? And again, you're not pulling the wool over any front office's eyes that they see that 52 and some change $1 million player option and know that you're probably going to pick it up. So like it's just like playing the game, I guess, so to speak, but it didn't really make a ton of sense to me when I saw this morning.
Yeah, and I still think the same teams we talked about last week are probably the teams outside of Phoenix. I just don't see how they get anything done.
Yeah.
Are the teams if he does get traded to look for? And I mentioned it last week. Like the usage rate's the lowest since like 2010. So like whether it's they're phasing him out and playing, well, they're clearly playing through Hero and Bam more, but also a lot of it's probably just we know what Jimmy does a lot in the regular season. So that'll be
Well, and
probably the top storyline for trades as we get into the deadline.
I do think it's interesting that, or notable at least, that Bradley Beal, right, is not the beacon of health, right? But he had just gotten back on the court, I believe, like a game or two prior to now sitting out the last two games. All of a sudden, he's got knee swelling. So again, like, could that be Bradley Beal's body acting up again and holding him out legitimately? Sure, like that would not surprise me. But now that we are, we're less than 3 months away from the trade deadline. We know that the trade ban on guys who signed in the offseason was lifted on Sunday with the Schroder trade. So like now I've got like little mini alarm bells spinning now that all of a sudden the day after the Jimmy Butler trade rumors come out and he says that Phoenix is on his list of teams, all of a sudden now Bradley Beal is not playing. So like my antenna went up. So last night, I guess sticking with the Warriors theme here, but bringing Luka and the Luka magic into this. Last night, man, in the Bay, Luka Doncic, I believe in the first half, had like 28, 8, and 9. Finishes 45 points, 11 boards, 13 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks for good measure. Adam, he was 16 of 23 from the field, 6 of 11 from 3. So you can do the math there on what he did around the rim and in the mid range as well. That is a big statement win, I think, for the Mavericks. They're on the road. So from a Mavericks perspective, you look at the standings now. Again, we are still tightly packed in this Western Conference, but there's now a 2.5 game gap between the Mavericks and the Rockets, who are tied for third, and the Nuggets 2.5 games back in at the 5 seed. And then again, just 1.5 games between the Nuggets at 5 and the Kings at 12. So we've kind of got a top 4 group there, like trying to separate from the pack. And that win last night was big for the Mavericks joining that group or keeping up with that top group of 4.
I obviously didn't watch this game because I was too busy with the Bills and
Sure.
everything. Didn't I believe I saw? Did Dallas set the record for most threes in a game?
I believe they
It's like
did.
48.
Yeah, I mean it was the final score, Adam,
Yeah.
143 to 33. I think it was like 83-79 at the half. Like this game was just no defense to be found. Yeah, you get 48 total threes between the two teams. It was up 48 of 95. So the teams shoot better than 50% combined from 3, 276 points scored in that one, right? And the Luka line kind of overshadows, right? This is the second time that Klay Thompson has been back in the Bay this season with the Mavericks. 29 points, 7 of 11 from 3. Kyrie Irving, 21 points, 8 assists, right? You get 14 points, 4 of 8 from 3 from Q Grimes off the bench. And on the Warriors side, I mean, Draymond Green, 5 of 9 from 3. He's been really, really good from 3 relative to expectation for Draymond this season. 5 of 9 from deep from Wiggins, 7 of 13 from Steph, 3 of 8 from Buddy Hield. Lindy Waters, 4 of 7 off the bench from 3. So it was just an offensive explosion. That game was extremely fun to watch. I only caught the second half of that game running around yesterday, but it seems like a big win for Dallas. And like you mentioned for the Warriors, though, right? 2-8 in their last 10 after the 12-3 start. So they're 14-11. Again, 8th in the West here. Again, they just brought in Schroder, but it does feel like they, not only are the reports kind of indicating that Golden State is still going to be very active in trying to find more trade partners, but like the recency bias is making me say you have to find more trade partners. Again, if you're trying to maximize this last little window that you have with Steph Curry to try to make some noise in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, we know that if they could do the old 2K trick and accept trades on, they would have
Yeah.
Laurie Markkinen right now because that's who they've been trying to get for like over a year now. Don't know if that's gonna happen, but yeah, like I didn't realize it got that bad for them. I knew that obviously they weren't playing like they were to start the season, but I do think like 14 and 11 is kind of what we thought they would hover around at this point. And the 12-3 start, whatever, was great, but probably. And and you did mention it too. Their schedule outside of that Cleveland game and the Boston game where they won, they played a lot of games against teams they should be beating. So
Yeah.
maybe that's part of it. And of course, like they have some young pieces, obviously, but the core of this team is still relatively old. So as we get longer in the season, these stretches might happen for them.
NBA Cup semifinals, of course, took place on Saturday. In the early game, the Bucks outlast the Hawks here, 110 to 102. This is a very fun game to watch, in my own opinion. I did find it interesting, Adam, that we're recording here on Monday. We've got the doubleheader Monday Night Football tonight. One of the games is Falcons at Raiders. So there was a large Atlanta contingent in the crowd, dude. This is a neutral site game, and we had people counting for Giannis at the free throw line. So
I
like, I
still think
really
that's the dumbest thing, by the way. I
yeah.
think it helps him.
Yeah.
I've said this during the finals when they won against Phoenix. I literally think it helps him when they count. So
Yeah. And I mean, again, I think that game just had a chance to be a little bit dead in that arena, and I just thought it was the opposite of kind of what I expected there. I didn't kind of clock that the Falcons fans would be in town as well. But to your point about the free throw shooting for Giannis, right? It certainly didn't hurt him. 12 of 18 from the line, 61% on the year, so slightly better than what he's been doing so far this season. But 32 points, 14 boards, 9 assists for Giannis, and he was 10 of 15 from the floor. So doing his thing, kind of willing this team across the finish line. Dame Lillard did his best Dyson Daniels impression in the first quarter, but then got it going. 25.6 boards, 7 assists with 3 steals. But again, just 8 of 21. I think he started 0 for 6. And on the other side, man, like the Hawks were not only in this game, but winning for a good portion of the second half. Huge third quarter from the Hawks. Trae Young, 35.7 boards, 10 assists. He was 9 of 18 from the floor, 14 of 17 from the line, but not enough at the end of this one. And the Bucks advanced to the NBA Cup final here in 2024.
every week we do cup game predictions.
Yeah.
I get one team in the East right, and you get like we both get one team right and the other wrong. And it happened again where I went with Atlanta, and we'll talk about the other game. You went with Milwaukee. So if you've been following our predictions, you've been like 50% every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But I will say with Giannis too,
yeah,
this MVP race, like it's Jokic right now, but those three guys at the top, it's going to be insane. Like,
yep.
absolutely insane. Like because Giannis, they've won like 12 of their last 15 now, and he's out. He leads the league in scoring, and he's doing everything. And if Jokic wasn't having the season he's having, and we'll talk about Shea, but like, yeah, this is an insane MVP race, and you can even throw Tatum in there at the 4 spot if you want. It's loaded.
And that's what I was gonna say is like it kind of exactly what you hinted at there, where it's like if Jokic wasn't Jokic, like SGA and Giannis right now would be very deserving favorites in this race if there wasn't, the Serbian monster there in Denver with what he's been doing. Finally had a down game on Friday evening. But the last thing I wanted to say about this game, I thought Chris Middleton had a very tough outing.
Yep.
Like the stat line might not show it, like 6 points, 3 boards, 4 assists, a steal and a block in his 22 minutes.
Turnovers.
Still not finding his feet. And like the 3 turnovers in 22 minutes doesn't jump out as like, oh, what, like what happened there? Like a little bit worse than you would certainly expect in that amount of time. But the timing of those turnovers and the way they look too, like you had to see this, I think, to really internalize how poorly he played. And the fact that, to me, Chris Middleton is one of the only players on this team, especially when Damian Lillard is off the floor, that can initiate their offense, that can throw an entry pass to Giannis, whether he's at the nail, whether he's at the block, what have you. And the fact that he was so shaky with that decision-making, especially down the stretch, I mean, the inbounds pass in the backcourt that let Atlanta like kind of have a last gasp of a chance there, like, that was just very, very poorly executed. And then this doesn't show up as a turnover, but like it led to the inbounds pass where he did turn it over, calling the Bucks' final timeout as he allowed himself to get trapped coming across half court with 38 seconds to go. Like, it was very discouraging. I don't think that's going to become a theme, but like part of that mental game is why I still believe in Chris Middleton being able to make a difference with this Bucks side. And I was not encouraged after that performance, but the Bucks still escape and make it to the final. Anything else for you on the first game?
Well, yeah, and here's the thing: like he has not even been close to Chris Middleton, and they're 12 and what 12 of their last 15 they've won, and they're one of the hottest teams in basketball. So if they can continue to get solid production from Brolo, and Bobby Portis off the bench continues to play well, and then Middleton, like he doesn't have to be 100% of like 3-4 years ago, Chris Middleton.
Right.
If he can be 80-85%, yeah, I mean, they'll, like I said, I think with the Orlando injuries, they'll probably be the third seed. Unless, Brunson and Towns can hold them off. I think they'll probably be the third seed very, very soon in the East with the way they're
Yeah.
playing.
Wouldn't be surprised. You were talking about our predictions, right? And I think I got the Bucks right? You got the Thunder right, but I think the Hawks had a much better chance when these games actually played out compared to what the Rockets did. Because to me, like Thunder just kind of dust the Rockets here. Like it was like a little brother situation almost. From my eyes, 111 to 96 there. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, like you mentioned, masterclass, 32 points, 8 boards, 6 assists, 5 steals and a block, game high plus 16. Alex Caruso off the bench in his 20 minutes matched that plus 16, though. So, again, we've talked at length about the depth on this team. Still doing this without Chet Holmgren. They are just a monster of a team. Lou Dort as well, 19 points, 5 of 9 from 3. Hartenstein meets the challenge against Şengün, 21 and
It's
8,
been
2
so good.
assists on 9 of 12. Yeah, Hartenstein was great. Limits Alperen Şengün to just 13 points in that one. So we could wax poetic about the Thunder, but the Rockets, like I mentioned Şengün and his struggles, but as a team, 37% from the floor, 24 from 3, just 60%, 15 of 25 from the free throw line. Like one of the things that we talked about in the last episode was the rebounding advantage that the Rockets were going to have because they crash the glass top 5 rate in the league, and the Thunder are the worst rebounding team, and that plays out. 19 offensive rebounds. They were plus 6 on the boards overall, and this game was still not close. So again, maybe the Rockets are one of those teams. We know they're on the Jimmy Butler list, but could potentially be looking to add a piece or two elsewhere. They need some help here, man, offensively, because it's just like when this Rockets team is going up against the other top, 4 or 5 teams in the league, they just do not have enough flow offensively, enough consistency to get it done. Because when you're relying on guys like Jalen Green, who's so hot and cold as your volume scorer in the offense, you're relying on a guy like Jabari Smith, who plays 40 minutes in the semifinal and only takes 8 shots, right? You just need more on that end of the floor because we know the problem doesn't lie on the defensive end. And the last thing I'll say in this long rambling recap, Adam, Amin Thompson was very, very good again. And on the offensive end, he was the lone bright spot for the Rockets. 9 of 15 from the floor, 19.7 boards and assists, and 3 steals. I don't know, man. They need some help. This is certainly not a discouraging performance by the Rockets because, again, they are not ready to compete at this level. I think you and I agree on that. But I did want to see a little bit more of a competitive game, and it's just OKC kind of waltzing to the final here.
Yeah, and like we like Houston's defense, but when Oklahoma City's locked in, they
Yep.
are better than everybody. The real story is like I think Fred was like 3 of 13. Jalen Green didn't have a good nobody really had. We love Amon Thompson, especially what he can do defensively and versatility. But if he leads your team in scoring, it's probably a problem for your
Yeah.
offense in that
Yeah.
particular game. And then like the Thunder, like 4 of their 5 starters, everybody but Case and Wallace had 15 plus points. And then SGA has been insane. SGA has scored 25 or more points in 15 straight games. And the majority of them have been 30 plus. So he has been, as you'd expect, insanely good since Chet's been out.
Yeah.
I've talked about Hartenstein more than any player on this podcast outside of Tyler Hero, apparently. He's been amazing. Jalen Williams, I talked about probably the third most of any player on this podcast. I legitimately think he's a defensive player of the year candidate. This team, again, I think it's them in Boston and then Cleveland as the 3 best teams. But right now, like, what do we always talk about when teams are ranked really closely, like OKC and Boston? What's the deciding factor? Who has the best player? It's the Thunder. So I think they're the best team in the league. And again, they're going to get a 7-foot defensive anchor who can shoot threes very soon in their lineup again.
Yeah, and it's not going to be fun for the rest of the Western
Because we haven't even
Conference.
seen they can play those lineups with Hartenstein and Chet and be fine.
Yeah,
So good luck.
absolutely.
And with him passing, like imagine playing a zone against them and then Hartenstein's just at the free throw line and all of a sudden you pass to him at the free throw line in the high post and let him facilitate out of that. And then you have Chet spacing, and you have SGA and J Dub crashing and cutting. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, I feel like, not to take a dig at your Cavaliers, but I feel like they're like the Cavs, but upgraded at like every position, basically.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like other than point guard, but like SGA essentially is a point guard, so it doesn't really
Yeah,
matter.
yeah,
Um, and then Chet is, you know, like the shooting difference between Chet and JA is like otherworldly. So
yep.
I don't want to play
Well,
them.
yeah, of course, on Tuesday night, that's the Cup final. 6 games on Monday night tonight. The game that I'm eyeing here on Monday, Adam, is Nuggets at Kings. This is Nuggets currently on Monday, right around lunchtime here on the East Coast. Nuggets by 1. But we mentioned, we talked about how tightly packed we are in between 5 and 12. This is fifth place Nuggets at 13 and 10. 12th place Kings at 13 and 13. So a very big game jostling for position there in the middle of the Western Conference standings. And I think just on the surface, going to be a really fun game to watch Jokic and Sabonis, to watch Fox, and maybe not so fun to watch Jamal Murray these days. But
Really
you
hasn't.
get my point. I think this is going to be a really entertaining one to kind of maybe fall asleep to later tonight, because that is I believe 10 p.m. Eastern start out there in Sacramento.
Yeah, I think Jokic. You mentioned he had a down game. I think he bounces back today.
Yep, I agree. And then Tuesday, the Cup final, Bucks and Thunder out there in Las Vegas right now. Thunder 4.5 point favorites, 215 implied total. I'm gonna go first this time. I think we're probably in lockstep. I'm going with the favorites. I got OKC.
Yeah, I'd be a little bit more interested if we had, Chris Middleton again.
Mm-hmm.
But between how good the Thunder are, and again, Milwaukee's been as hot as anybody, but just I'm not gonna talk as highly as I have about this Thunder team and then not select them. So
Yep. And then no games on Wednesday night. So we will be back, of course, on Thursday. Huge slate of games on Thursday, but with not a ton to talk about outside of these Monday games. The Cup final, which, of course, we will recap in detail. Gonna open up the trade machine on Thursday, Adam. See what we can cook up. See what kind of trades might be sitting out there that aren't in the general zeitgeist so far. Maybe some smaller trades. Maybe we're trying to move some superstars. Maybe we're making some Homer trade acquisitions for the Cavs, for the
I don't
Spurs.
even know
We'll
what Cleveland could
see.
do. Like,
Yeah.
like San Antonio, like you could at least see them like trade Harrison Barnes to a contending team for a
Yeah.
couple picks. Like Cleveland, I just think they're good where they're at. They're not going to make any moves.
Yeah. So we will mess around with the trade machine on Thursday. But before we get out of here, let's close it out as we always do with our stock up and stock down. Adam, what's your stock down here on episode 30?
Yeah, it's a team that we've unfortunately talked about a lot, and it's not even really their fault. It's just misfortune. It's Philadelphia. I mean, Embiid leaves the other day after getting hit in the face, and then now Jared McCain's out indefinitely. It's just like, what did this team do to deserve this injury misfortune? And they keep getting a little bit healthier. Then we see Embiid come back and Maxey come back, and it's like, okay, this team could make a run, and what could they look like? And then it just feels like it's a lost season for them. And at this point, like you just feel bad for the fans because they just haven't had a chance to watch this team at full strength, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, like they could have been my stock up if it weren't for the injuries that they sustained
Yeah,
on Friday.
that's how
Because they're
quickly
a
it
game and
changes.
they're what, 2 games back of the 10 seed now for the play-in, like, and they could start. I think they could still get there because Brooklyn has just they pulled the plug on the first day they possibly could on Schroeder,
And I think
right? So
Cam Johnson or Dorian Finney-Smith will be gone. So like,
yeah, maybe both.
yeah,
Maybe both. And then just the Nets and the Pistons between the Sixers and that 10 spot, but just gets even tougher now with no Embiid for he's got a or a sinus fracture again, right? And for a guy like this is going to be the third time I think he's had a broken bone
yeah.
in
And if he has to wear
space.
that mask, like that cost, like I don't think people realize. Like, obviously, I don't play basketball at the NBA
Sure.
level,
Yeah.
but he a couple playoffs ago he had the mask during the playoff run. He had like Embiid's always been a really spotty like double team passer.
Hmm.
But he was really struggling to see out of that thing when he got, because he's getting double teamed, and
Yeah.
he struggled with that. And like if he has to wear that again, like it's not easy to play with.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep our eye on Philly. My stock down. Going to the bottom of the league, not just the Eastern Conference. My stock down is the Washington Wizards, and it's not that they're losing, Adam, right? Because it's what they want to do this year. Like you do want to see as a Wizards fan, as a member of the Wizards front office, the organization, you want to see some of these young guys progress throughout the year. But you are certainly not, shedding a tear for any of these losses. Sitting at 3-21, Cooper Flag will make everything feel better if they're able to land the top prospect next summer. But what I did want to highlight here, Adam, is that the Wizards, particularly at home this year, they have 2 wins at home in DC this year. The Boston Celtics have 3 wins in DC this year. So just like kind of like maybe rubbing it in a little bit to the Wizards that like the top of the conference here, the Celtics have more wins on their home floor than the Wizards do. So stock down
Who
this week.
wins, the Washington Wizards at full strength or Boston's second unit, which includes Peyton Pritchard?
Yeah, and that's really like that's yeah. So you'd be
Well, it
running
depends
like
if they're full strength, because then you have Al or Porzingis.
right. So you'd have Pritchard,
You get Hauser in there.
you'd have Al, you'd have Hauser in there.
I might
You can
I
run
might
Al at the
take Boston.
4.
I might take Boston.
Yeah, if you've got Pritchard and Al and Hauser, and then you're probably running Al at the 4. You're putting either Cornette or
Yep.
Kada out there, and then I don't know who else you're running out there. Jaden Springer. I don't think it matters. I think I'm probably still giving a slight lead to the Celtics. Um, but so there's our stock downs. Let's close it out with stock up here. What do you got on episode 30?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with somebody that I don't think I've talked about all season, and he's a player that I've wanted the Cavs to get for a couple of years now. I think he's a really, really overlooked role player, and it's Royce O'Neal. I think we obviously know this team has been awful in the games Durant's been out, but
Mm-hmm.
when you have the system that they have, when it's Durant and Beal and Tyus Jones is one of the best facilitating pass first point guards, you need your role players to be able to spot up and shoot. And Royce O'Neal is very quietly averaging a career high 11 points per game. He's shooting like 44% from three.
Yeah,
He
try
is third,
46.
46%. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
He is averaging the third most spot up points per game at 6.8. He's shooting 44.5% off spot ups. Like he's been really good for them. He's giving you like 30 minutes a game, roughly, lately at least. And again, like this team's obviously going to go only as far as Durant and Booker can take them. But there's going to be games when they get in the playoffs where Royce O'Neal's probably going to have like 18 points. And he's, I've always liked Royce O'Neal, so wanted to give a shout out to a player on a team where he's probably the 8th, 9th most talked about player. But I've always wanted Royce O'Neal in Cleveland, and he's been really good for Phoenix this year, very quietly. And again, as long as they have those guys, like he's going to fill that role pretty well for them.
That's a great call by you. Royce said that 45.8% is 10th best in the league right now. And
How
again,
many
this is a
attempts
guy
per game is that? It's got to be at least like 4 or 5.
5.7.
Yeah.
Like he's playing really, really well on both ends of the floor there. My stock up real quick. Just McCall Bridges. Saw this stat floating around. He becomes the 6th player in NBA history to play his first 500 games without missing a single contest, and the first player to do so since 1985. So stock up McCall Bridges. He's been, there's been shots taken at Bridges, particularly because his shot changed to come into the year. So a little bit of an up and down start for him, but one thing remains: steady as ever, not missing games. He's out there when there's one on the schedule. So stock up for McCall Bridges. And that'll do it for us here on episode 30 of the FTN Fast Break podcast. Adam, anything else for you before we shut it down?
No, I mean, just getting to that time of the year where football is, the regular season at least, is almost done, and it's upsetting, but luckily we have basketball, and we're pushing our baseball stuff heavy this week because it's awesome. So I'll be tweeting a lot of that stuff out. Make sure you check it out at ftnfantasy.com because I used to do baseball about 5-6 years ago. Too much for me. It's not my strong suit, but we have a lot of amazing analysts at FTN that really, really excel at it. So I'm excited to push that content because early bird stuff is live right now, I believe. And all of a sudden you look at the calendar and it's going to be like pitchers and catchers reporting. So
Yep, just a couple weeks away from that. So, shout out to Vlad, right? Kind of our fearless leader on the MLB
Yep.
side of things. Not just the draft content, but also I saw the underdog rankings went up yesterday. So I'm going to be perusing those this week, especially with our couple days kind of off from the NBA here. So check out the MLB content. Of course, NFL rolls on, NBA, college basketball, everything going on right now at FTN Fantasy. And fire up your trade machines. We'll do the same. We'll see you guys back here on Thursday for the next episode of the FTN Fast Break. Till then, he's Adam, and I'm Zach. Goodbye.